If you're rich, or if your main goal in life is to have a lot of money, Jesus has a message for you in the gospel. One day he was asked if it was impossible for a rich person to get to heaven. He didn't say that it was impossible, but he said that it was easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to heaven. Now you would think that it is impossible based on hearing that for a rich man to get to heaven, because a camel cannot go through the eye of a needle. But he's not talking about a needle as we would imagine it. Jesus is talking about a gate in Jerusalem that was called the eye of a needle. And camels would pass through it, but only if they lowered themselves and were stripped off of everything that they were carrying. And that is the message of Jesus Christ. For a rich person to get to heaven, it means that that person has to strip themselves of what they are attached to, because of the reality that we all have to accept that no matter how much we have, we cannot take anything with us after this life. So it's not necessarily that material possessions or money is bad in itself. St. Paul doesn't say that money is evil. He doesn't say money is the root of all evil. He says love of money is the root of all evil. And we see in the story of the rich man and Lazarus, it's a parable of Jesus, we see how Jesus portrays a man who was so consumed with himself, so consumed with pleasing himself based on the material possessions that he owned. And he shows how this man did not end up getting to heaven. And it's a very scary reality for a lot of people that are attached to what they own. Because we see in the story a man who did not get to heaven, who was so rich and who enjoyed himself every single day of his life. And we see a poor man who was laying at his door, who did not have anything, did not even have food to eat, and yet this man went to heaven. What was this rich man's problem? It was not that he owned things, and that is one thing that we have to understand. Owning things and having a lot of money is not a problem in itself, but it's what we do with the money that we own that could cause a problem for our salvation, for our eternal salvation. What was the problem with this rich man? We see in the very first sentence of the gospel, the way that Jesus describes it. First of all, there was a rich man. That's what Jesus calls him. And then when we hear about the poor man, we see that he actually has a name, Lazarus. It means God is my help. And so the rich man was defined by the fact that he was rich. So he defined himself based on the material possessions that he owned. And so that is one thing that we have to be very careful of. No matter what we own, no matter how much money we have, it cannot define who we are as human beings. We are children of God, made in his image and likeness. No material thing, no amount of money could define us and could take that away from us. And so we should live as if that is the most important thing in our life, that we are children of God, not that we have money. Jesus continues, the rich man was clothed in purple and fine linen, and he feasted sumptuously every day. So those two things really tell us a lot about the state of this man's life. He was clothed in purple and fine linen, and he feasted sumptuously every day. This was a daily thing where, first of all, he was so consumed with how he looked in front of others, about his outward appearance, clothed in purple and fine linen. And this was something that he did every day. He was so consumed, his mind and his mentality was so consumed with how other people perceived him. He feasted sumptuously every day. What's wrong with this? It's not wrong to feast. It's not wrong to enjoy yourself, to have a nice meal, to be with your family, to be with your loved ones, and to go to a party, for example. It's not wrong, but every day this man was doing that. There's a certain balance in our life where we have to understand that there are certain priorities that we have. We have to work hard. We have to be with our families. We have to spend time on our faith. We cannot be completely consumed in enjoying ourselves, in fulfilling our physical pleasure, because that will make us only focused on that. We have to balance ourselves by seeing God as the number one priority, our family as the second main priority, and then work or school has to be next, so that we order our life the way that God wants us to. And then once we are focused on ourselves, once we are good with our families, we have good relationships with them, at least from our perspective. And if we have a good relationship with God, if we are working on ourselves, and if we are trying to be the best people we can be, then there's room for enjoyment. But The idea is that we have to realize that comfort and the physical pleasure is not the most important thing in life, and it should not really be done every day sumptuously, like this man did, every day in excess. It's one thing to desire earthly comfort, but it's another thing to be so consumed with it that it is the only goal of your life. Actually, it's not very comfortable always being a Christian. You have to deny yourself of certain pleasures. We have to fast. We have to pray so that God gives us strength to overcome temptation. If we're only filling ourselves with the pleasures of this world at all times, how are we going to overcome the temptations and the sins that we struggle with in our lives? So don't think that I'm saying that you all have to go and live in a monastery and not have any physical pleasure. Don't go and cancel every single plan that you had. Just make your life balance, to make God your number one priority, and make the comfort not be the primary thing in your life, but only something that you enjoy because you are working hard on your life, on your family, and most importantly, on your spirituality. Because we have to get to the point that if the comfort is not there, we will still be happy because we have God and each other. And then we see the result of what happens when we are so consumed with our outward appearance, just like this man was. He was so consumed with how he looked and with what he wore, and he was so consumed with the physical pleasures of this world and indulging himself every single day. What is the result? There are two main results that would happen from that. Number one is that he did not notice that there was a poor man literally at his doorstep. He did not even notice him. And so what does that make our lives when we are so consumed with our outward appearances and when we are so consumed with indulging ourselves in pleasure always? It makes us so self-centered that we do not think of those around us and those that are right next to us in our lives. Jesus wants us to see the needs of those around us and to give of ourselves to help others so that they can also share in the good blessings that God has given us. We have to realize that all that we have is a gift from God, and we are going back to God, our Creator, if we do His will on earth. If we are not so consumed with ourselves, if we give of ourselves, if we accept the gifts that He has given us and use those gifts for the good of our family, for the good of those around us, and ultimately for the true good of ourselves. And what is the true good of ourselves? It's not to have a lot of money. It's not to have physical pleasure. The true good of ourselves is in the ultimate answer and in the ultimate end of this parable of Jesus. What we see, the man did not go to heaven. The ultimate good for the human being is to get to heaven. All that he had, all that he did on this earth, all the pleasure that he had was not enough for him. Abraham told him, you received your good things in this world, in the earthly world. If you enjoy it that much, and if that's all that you care about, what makes you think you're going to go to heaven? What makes you think you're going to like heaven? Heaven is worshiping God. In heaven, it doesn't matter how much money you had on this earth. The poorest of the poor, this man, Lazarus, went to heaven before the rich man did. I mean, just imagine the social status that this rich man had. How much power he had, how much money he had. It did not matter after this life. And the poor man that literally had nothing, the dogs would come and lick his sores. He would barely eat the crumbs from the rich man's table. Our goal in life should be to get to heaven and to help those around us to get to heaven by living in unity with God, by denying ourselves. That's what Jesus says is a condition for discipleship. He says, he who does not deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me cannot be my disciple. We all want to be disciples of Jesus. We have to be very careful, brothers and sisters, not to be consumed with the things of this world. The devil puts a lot of things in our way to try to distract us from the road of salvation. There are ways that the devil could use money or the pursuit of worldly success to destroy a person's soul. It could be, for example, when a person does something illegal and or against the law of God. When that happens, you are essentially selling your soul. You're saying, I don't care about my own salvation. I don't care how I am before God. I just care about making money, and I'm going to do whatever I can just to make money. Or it could be that you could be tempted to sell a product or to make your business completely based on something that leads people to live a bad moral and spiritual life. If your only goal is to make money and not to care about those around you, your mind is in the wrong place, and you need to focus on God and on what God wants. Jesus wants to put good things in our life and in our attention. He wants us to focus on the good. He wants us to focus on the cross and on the blessings that He has given us, so that we can live in unity with Him, overcoming our sinfulness by His grace, and trying to help those around us also see the good that comes from God and see the good that we are all called to, which is unity with God for all eternity, and which is better than anything that this earthly world could buy.